up? Just Aaron right here, Question Period Canada. How you doing? It was a pretty wild day today, like on Parliament Hill. They're doing some serious investigating into our public safety, national security. Paul Bernardo is back in the headlines. Anyways, we're going to let the politics tell the story. We're just going to watch. This is from a live show that we do every day. We're on here, so sorry for that, but this is the footage that you're going to want to see. This stuff is happening in Canada, guys.
An honor to be here on behalf of all Canadians and the people from Kamloops, Thompson, Caribou. Mr. Chair, this is what I can say in the circumstances. I think most Canadians were shocked at the transfer of Paul Bernardo, and I feel similarly Canadians are also shocked to find out that Luca Magnotta and others are not only in medium security but also in the same penitentiary. It's as conservatives, we will always stand with victims, stand with those seeking transparency, and those seeking the truth. And it's for that reason that today we bring forward this motion in light of the significant offenses that have been committed by not only these two people, but others who are in medium security to further study this. It's important that we get to the bottom of the impact of bills like Bill C-83 and other policies in place with this Liberal government. And with that, I will move my motion and read it into the record, Mr. Chair. The motion reads as follows: that in light of the transfer of sadistic killer Luca Magnotta out of a maximum security prison to a medium security prison, the same facility that serial killer and rapist Paul Bernardo was transferred to last year, and given that the Minister's office was made aware of these transfers in advance, the committee immediately undertake a study in priority order of no less than 6 meetings, and that these meetings begin this week on how the decision to make this transfer was made, the prisoner transfer process for prisoners in maximum security facilities, and the committee report its findings to the House of Commons, and the committee shall call the following witnesses to appear: A, the Commissioner of the Correctional Service of Canada, Anne Kelly; B, the Deputy Minister of Public Safety, Sean Tupper; C, the Minister of Public Safety and Democratic Institutions and Intergovernmental Affairs, the Honourable Dominic LeBlanc; D, the former Minister of Public Safety, the Honourable Marco Mendicino; E, the Chief of Staff to the Minister of Public Safety at the time; F, Janice Charette, former Clerk of the Privy Council; G, the Warden at La Macasa Institution; H, representatives from the Union of Canadian Correctional Officers; I, Marcia Penner, Tennille Chwalziak, and Laura Murray as individuals. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. CUPUTO. And now we have Mr. Lloyd, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I know we've had a number of meetings on the issue of the Bernardo transfer already, but certainly new information has come to light that I think is shocking to Canadians. It's shocking because some people might have dismissed the transfer of Paul Bernardo as an isolated incident. I know that the Minister of Public Safety at the time said it was shocking and incomprehensible. But now we've learned that it's not just an isolated incident, that this is a pattern, a repeated pattern under this government, that several high-profile serial killers and killers have been moved out of maximum and into medium. Furthermore, there's been recent ATIPs that have revealed that the Chief of Staff of the Public Safety Minister at the time was aware that these transfers were taking place. And it's interesting because in all of our study about Paul Bernardo's transfer, the Minister's office knew all along that Luca Magnotta was being transferred in 2022 as well, and yet that information was never brought to light. It was never revealed to this committee under our previous study. And that's not the only high-profile case that we've seen. And so I think there's...
Point of order, Ms. O'Connell, go ahead.
Oh, no.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, can we get this
smelly cat
distributed?
It has been. I'm told it just has been, Ms. O'Connell.
Jennifer O'Connell's a twit, guys. What do you guys think?
The text?
She's such a stereotype. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Just check your email. The clerk is telling me it's attached to the email.
Okay, I have it.
Thank you. Continue, Mr. Lloyd, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm certainly glad that all members are getting a copy of this motion. I think it's a very good motion. I think it hits at the heart of the matter. And it raises, this new information that we've received, that the Chief of Staff of the Public Safety Minister knew, that staff in the Prime Minister's office and the Privy Council office knew. I think this raises very important questions that need to be furthermore looked into, and this is a question about the principle of ministerial accountability. If there is a policy, unofficial or official, in ministers' offices or in the Prime Minister's office that staff are not to inform ministers of hot-button controversial issues, I think this undermines a key tenet of ministerial responsibility and ministerial accountability. And if that is indeed a policy, I think that needs to be looked into, because ministerial accountability is one of the bedrock principles of our parliamentary system of government. And we cannot allow mistakes like this, whether deliberate or from incompetence, to continue. And so it is a very worthwhile study for us to continue at this committee. And I think also we need to look further into Bill C-83 and other legislation that I think has been contributing to this rise in the amount of transfers out of maximum and into medium security prison. And so with that, I'll just be saying I support this motion, and I'll pass on to the next speaker.
Sorry, did you call my name, Mr. Chair?
Did, yes.
Sorry, there's a little bit of a delay. Thanks, Chair.
Indeed.
And I'm glad we have this motion. I think from our perspective, we have no issue with looking further into transfers of prisoners, classifications, and working with this committee to put forward reasonable, worthwhile recommendations on how we can advance victims' rights in this country, how we can improve the system. But I think what we learned from the last few days of study that we did on this, because, Mr. Chair, it's important to note that this isn't actually new. This isn't something that the Conservatives are just bringing forward today. We actually, as a committee, have already held several meetings on this and heard testimony. And so this would be a continuation of that. So,
can you hear what she's saying?
I think today, and I hope that today is not just Conservatives performing for clips, and that this committee is actually serious about working together to put forward serious, legitimate policy recommendations, how we can move things forward. And because that's exactly what we want to do and what we did as a committee when we all came prepared to ask questions of CSC and the witnesses that we had before on this very issue. So again, no issue as we've participated.
David, hit you slow. What's up?
And asked these tough questions, as I think all Canadians want to. I will point out, however, I think it's important that we do look into this. It was stated just in the earlier speaker, Chair, that this was somehow related to a liberal legislation or change, and that's simply not true. In fact, some of the highest years of prisoner classification changes from maximum to medium were under Harper Conservative governments. In 2012 and 2013, there were 291 reclassification from maximum to medium. In 2013 to 14, 319 from maximum to medium. So if there's a question of how this is happening, what the policies are in place for the Correctional Services Canada, then I think that's a wholesome conversation we need to have. But I think putting it out there that this was somehow a change in legislation or policy is, frankly, Mr. Chair, just not accurate, because I think it's important that Canadians understand if there are certain politicians trying to use the most heinous and horrendous crimes in this country as a fear-mongering tactic to suggest that policies are somehow, that current policies are somehow different from when Conservatives have held office, because I think it's important we actually get this data on the table so Canadians see exactly how decisions are made. If this committee
Jones,
wants
what's
to make
up?
recommendations to the government to make changes or review policy, I think that's absolutely appropriate. But if there's this suggestion, if we're starting off at this base of misinformation, that there was a policy
Hey,
change
Dana, what's
when,
up? How are you?
Mr. Chair, I just outlined the highest number of maximum to medium reclassification in our justice system happened in the year of 2013, 2014. Under the Conservative so-called tough on crime language. So I think it's important we get the facts, and that's why we're very happy to continue to hold meetings on this and make legitimate, fulsome, policy recommendations based on what we hear, and ensuring that Canadians' voices are at the table. But like I said, Mr. Chair, I think it's incredibly important that we start from a place of truth and honesty. And so I hope that the continuation of this meeting does
She's
do that,
wrapping up,
because I do
William. She won't
think
be on for much
we have
longer.
a number of
There's many politicians that you will want
of
to see that are going to
policy
be involved in
insights
this
and things
today.
that I
Should be
think
fun.
every member of
Would
Patricia,
note
how are you?
that at the beginning of Ms. O'Connell's statement that she was talking about how Conservatives were being disingenuous because this wouldn't take 6 meetings, but I think certainly with those additional witnesses, I think it would take us to 6 meetings. And so I think that just, it shows that, you know, we have no problem with adding those witnesses, and we look forward to having 6 meetings on this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I agree with Monsieur Paul Hoos that people don't understand the system. He's right. My worry is that certain politicians attempt to use situations like
Ian
this
Slater,
to
what's
cloud how the system operates. On this committee right now, there's a former police officer who has a distinguished career of service, a former prosecutor who I also believe had a distinguished career of service to his community. But they know,
Hey, Terry, what's up, buddy?
and kind of not acknowledging the fact that our legal system operates independent of elected officials, that these decisions are made in terms of reclassification of inmates, made independently of elected officials. And as elected officials, we can be angry. I was very public in terms of my extreme disappointment and shock in terms of Mr. Bernardo's transfer. And it's something that we expressed as a committee, but these are decisions outside our control. I know Mr. Mott's probably didn't arrest certain people that other individuals in his community would want arrested. Mr. CUPUTO may have asked for a sentence that was lower than victims may have wanted, but he was making those decisions, and Mr. Mott's were making those decisions independently. And they were not popular, but they were not subject to, in Mr. Mott's case, the mayor coming in and saying this is wrong, or in Mr. CUPUTO's case, the premier coming in and saying this is inappropriate. Back when we had Ann Kelly, who's the commissioner in, I asked her, can the minister get involved in this? Can the minister direct the correctional services in the transfer of an inmate? Is it in a legal order? And her quote was, or her response to my question was, my understanding is that the minister does
Mr.
not
Biddle, please, we have
have
a point of
role.
order.
Sorry.
And my apologies, Mr. Chair. My apologies for interrupting Mr. Biddle, but I just wanted to clarify, we are speaking on the
Boomer Media, what's
amendments as proposed by Ms. O'Connell right now. Is that correct?
No, we're speaking just in the speaking order.
Okay, but don't we have to deal with,
Yes, in the amendment.
sorry to clarify, we are speaking on the amendments right now. Okay, so I just would just say maybe it is relevant to the greater study, but maybe if we could be talking about these amendments put forward by Ms. O'Connell.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll finish my point and then I'll give up the floor. That is appropriate. I thought we were back on the general list. I will just add Ms. Kelly's comments and then give up the floor and go back on the speaking list if that's all right. Her response was
this was
that
recorded
the minister
a couple of
does
hours
not have a
ago,
role.
Boomer.
It's very much an operational decision. So, Mr. Chair, if I can go back on the list on the main motion, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Biddle. Ms. Ferreri, please.
The source is CPAC.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to everyone for being here. And I know the victims' families are watching at home. Marcia, Laura, and Tennille, and
she's a sharp politician,
and
guys.
You know, I hope we get some resolve today for you, as I know how re-traumatized you've been. I want to read this into the record because I think it's really important. Everyone here, everyone in this courthouse, everyone in this city, everyone in this province, everyone in this country knows that you are a dangerous offender. The behavioral restraints that you require is jail. You require it, in my view, for the rest of your natural life. You are a sexually sadistic psychopath. The likelihood of you being treated is remote in the extreme.
Wow.
That is Justice Lesage, who sentenced Paul Bernardo. Those are his words. And when I came into this committee today, a reporter stopped me and asked me,
I love it, Boomer. It's a lot of fun. We have a great community here.
That criminals should be focusing on, if we should be in our justice system focusing on rehabilitation rather than punishment. And I asked that reporter to repeat back to me what the sentencing judge said about Bernardo. Can he ever be rehabilitated? And the answer is no. And so what we're here today to do is to discuss what this is, and I want to talk about the amendments that Ms. O'Connell has put forward, and I think adding more witnesses to the list is a great idea, because the point of this motion that was put forward by my colleague, Mr. CUPUTO, is to figure out how and why this secret transfer happened of Canada's most sadistic and notorious rapists and killers. Because if we don't understand how and why, then we can't fix it. And so I want to read to you, there was an article that came out March 9th by the CBC. Corrections chief briefed Mendocino's chief of staff weeks before Bernardo's prison transfer. In fact, the office was notified 7 times. So to Ms. O'Connell's point about, you know, in years gone by, never have we seen such gross incompetence. This isn't necessarily always about policy and legislation. This is about an incompetent people who didn't do their job. That's what we have to delve into here to make sure that this never happens again.
Rappel au règlement, Monsieur le Président.
Point of order, Chair.
Go ahead, Ms. Michaud.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Chair. Could we refocus the debate, because we have a motion before us that is dealing with Luca Magnotta, and it's not one about Paul Bernardo, and the MP seems to be digressing. So could we please come back to discussing what Ms. McConnell talked about, and then we can go on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Michaud. Ms. Ferrero, please, could you?
Thank you, Chair. Actually, the motion put forward does say, in light of the transfer of sadistic killer Luca Magnotta out of maximum security prison to a medium security prison, the same facility that serial killer and rapist Paul Bernardo was transferred to last year. So absolutely, this includes Bernardo, and it's important that we talk about that. So back to my point, I am here, and in regard to the amendments, which I think is critical, and it is great to hear that Mr. Biddle is going to be supportive of this, as this directly impacts the people of his riding who have written directly to him. And I'm going to read into the record some of the comments that have been stated. So this comes from Laura, Marcia, and Tennille, who were the best friends of Kristen French, whose life was taken. And when I asked of their response to the CBC article that the Minister of Public Safety's office was notified 7 times, and their response, and she gave me permission to read this to the committee. Hi, Michelle. Once again, we are saddened and disappointed that the Government of Canada has added to the continued emotional trauma and victimization of the many people who have been affected by this man and his brutal crimes. To know that so much communication took place about the transfer, and yet no one deemed it important enough to ensure that the minister was addressed personally, speaks yet again to the disregard of victims in our criminal justice system. This has to change. Victims should and must come first. Thank you for your continued effort on this. Signed, Laura, Marcia, and Tennille. Now,
Patty,
the
how are
bigger
you doing?
question has come up here today of where this all sits in terms of operations. And who does the Commissioner of Corrections
Point of
Canada
order.
report to?
Then we can get back to the main motion and discuss the those points that are relevant.
Thank you, Mr. Biddle.
So I guess to come back to the amendment, which is where I am
Hey, Dan,
speaking
what's
on,
up?
is,
How are
is
you?
that six, is that number 6. And the meetings that Ms. O'Connell has suggested we do less than, and in terms of, you know, moving things around. And I think this, with adding those,
Point of order.
we can get through to the meat and potatoes here of this, because I think what we're really here and elected to do here is be the voice of the people that don't have one, and in particular in this case the victims. So to the point it came earlier of, you know, it's an operational decision. Well, who does the Commissioner of Corrections Canada report to? The Minister of Public Safety. The Commissioner of CSC is recommended for appointment by the Prime Minister and approved by an order in Council. This appointed position reports directly to the Minister
what's
of
up,
Public
Joan? How
Safety,
are you guys?
Democratic Institutions, and Intergovernmental Affairs, and is accountable to the public via the Parliament. So that's important to have on the record of what that is. So I just want to read
Joanne
into
is it probably. Is
the
it
record that this letter that has garnered a lot of attention, and so it should. This is dated March 4th, 2024, and it is directed to Ms. Kelly, who is the Commissioner that reports to Corrections Canada and reports to the Minister of Public Safety. Ms. Kelly, I am sure by now you are aware that the living conditions of serial rapist, psychopath, murderer, and dangerous offender Paul Bernardo have been revealed. Contrary to your address, these conditions are quite the opposite to what you led us all to believe. You claimed there was a lateral move. Other than the fact that there are cells and prison guards, the difference between a maximum security penitentiary and a medium security facility such as La Macasa couldn't be more different. Please help me understand how someone such as Paul Bernardo can be housed in a facility such as this, one of Canada's most notorious killers, a psychopathic serial rapist, a designated dangerous offender. Does any of this mean anything? I can only imagine the prisoners remaining in maximum security penitentiaries must be asking the same question. If someone who commits the worst of the worst crimes doesn't qualify for the harshest conditions, then who does? This monster is allowed to play pickup hockey, tennis, billiards, work out in a 5-star gym facility, and partake in a workshop with tools, signing out tools like the ones he used to torture, sodomize, and ultimately kill his victims. Does this seem fair, logical, ethical, right? And your prison staff feel safe? They certainly shouldn't. My best friend, Kristen French, doesn't get to skate anymore. She was a very skilled and talented figure skater. She could have taken her love and passion for the sport to the top, but that dream was stolen from her, as was her life. A beautiful life that was filled with so much promise, all taken away by that psychopath monster who is now living the good life. I understand that Paul Bernardo has rights. I'm not disputing that. But these should be basic rights. He took away lives in the worst way possible. There has to be lifelong consequences for this, not rewards. Ms. Kelly, I have to assume that any human being with common sense can see that this move is nothing short of insanity. It's okay to make mistakes or revoke bad decisions. This was a very bad decision. I know you and your team claim all the criteria was met and that policies and procedures were followed. You can now see that by moving Bernardo was a major mistake, and a major mistake was made. You can right this wrong. By leaving Bernardo in medium security, you are telling everyone that what this monster did wasn't that bad. You are telling other criminals to just do their time quietly, and you will be rewarded despite the severity of the crime you commit. Is this the message you are wanting to give? I certainly hope not. There are more details coming out soon with regards to living conditions at La Macasa. It's time to do the right thing for the victims, their families, and all Canadian alike. Do the right thing, Ms. Kelly. Move Paul Bernardo back to maximum security where he belongs. And so I would encourage this committee, and in particular somebody who sits on this committee who is from the region in which these women were raped and murdered, to further study this so that we can, and with 6 meetings, I might add, with all of these witnesses, make sure that this never happens again. And to my point, to my colleague to my left, Mr. Paul Hoos, the Victim Bill of Rights be upheld, because we haven't seen that under this Liberal government. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're talking about the current Liberal NDP government decisions and not former governments that are no longer here.
What's up, Dive Crew Canada? How are you,
Continue,
brother?
Mr. Shefke, please.
I am speaking on the amendment, and I understand that they're going to try and use point of orders to cut off my train of thought because the facts are hurtful. But the next is with regards to the hockey rink that Mr. CUPUTO tweeted about, that my understanding was actually built decades ago, and the Conservative government had a decade in power, 4 years of which a majority government where they could do whatever they wanted and refused to stand on a soapbox. So where was the outrage there, Mr. Chair?
Point of order.
If we're going to talk about soapboxes, perhaps we could refrain from
Mr.
this.
Chair.
And
Let's debate, Mr. Chair.
Paul Bernardo was not in medium security at the time that Prime Minister Harper was in. Okay. Let's talk about soapboxes. If we're going to talk about soapboxes,
it's getting good.
We can do that.
CUPUTO's not going to take it.
I will gladly point out, and once again, take a chainsaw to the soapbox made of toothpicks and say that the 3 worst years of prison escapes under this Conservative government, under this Conservative opposition, happened during the Harper years, Mr. Chair. So, what I'm hoping is that we actually focus on finding solutions for victims and not trying to paint another government as soft on crime when the government that has the worst record on crime is sitting right in front of me, and it's the Conservatives. Now, what I also want to say is that I hope that whatever we do moving forward in this study builds upon what we already know. What we already know, based on the testimony that we received from Commissioner Ann Kelly, a question posed by my colleague, Mr. Biddle, was verbatim, would it be a legal order for the minister to interject in the specific transfer of an individual? And her response was, verbatim, my understanding is that the minister does not have that role. It is very much an operational decision. So I hope we build on that because we've established that. We have that testimony on record. I hope we also build on the questioning that I posed to Commissioner Kelly, which was, is the security surrounding a maximum security prison and a medium security prison, is one more secure than the other?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of points about the amendment. I can't support this amendment, obviously, because number one, I'm not sure why we would remove Paul Bernardo from the motion. As we've heard, you know, we have these letters submitted to the committee, March 9th, 2024. I'm writing today to request and encourage you to undertake a study of the reclassification and transfer of Luca Magnotta and other federal offenders at the emergency meeting called on Monday, March 11th, 2024. I, along with Tennille Chwalslik and Laura Murray, are willing to be witnesses and are available Wednesday through Friday, as well as whenever needed in the future. So I think the other point I think is which is very, very bizarre, I think, for people watching at home, is why the Liberals are bringing up what happened, you know, 10, 15 years ago. What we're talking about is right now. What we're talking about is the most sadistic killer in Canadian history. So I think it just doesn't make any sense. And how, again, back to the point of this motion and the amendment that was put forward by the Bloc, they want to push it down to one meeting. How in the world are you going to solve how and why this happened when we know the minister's office was notified 7 times? So one meeting is certainly not enough. To Mr. Julian's point about wasting taxpayer dollars and public safety, under this coalition that he has with the Liberals, sexual assaults are up 72%. Domestic violence is an epidemic in this country. So if you want to talk about public safety, we can certainly do that. It's never been worse. People have never felt more unsafe under this Trudeau government. In terms of taxpayer dollars, we can also delve into that greatly if he would like, in terms of what he's done with the Liberal government, in terms of we're servicing more debt than we are to health transfers because of their overspending and wasteful spending and corruption. And also we have a clerk and staff that work here regardless of whether we're here or not.
Mr. Julian?
She is pretty great.
Point of order. None of this is relevant, and I believe this is a filibuster. I do think it's important that we get to a vote in the next half hour prior to the committee meeting ending.
Mr. Julian.
This motion of not supporting Ms. Michaud's amendment, I do thank him for that, because what this amendment is doing is absolutely gutting the whole point of victims' rights. How are you? And I can't stress that enough when we have this opportunity here, and to call it political theater for the victims watching at home. This isn't theater. This is their life. To my Liberal member across the way, this is not political theater. It's their life.
Then stop treating it like political theater, Ms. Ferreri.
Oh,
thank you.
Are you for real? You literally just said if this was your family that you would do this.
Excuse me.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Please, the interpreters, let's respect them.
I think it's bizarre to call. We are literally translating what victims want. We are literally reading verbatim what they have asked us to do. That is what we were elected to do. I'm not sure how you can call that political theater. It makes no sense. And you can smirk through you, Mr. Chair. He's smirking. If he can explain to me how that is political theater, I would love to hear that. In the meantime, I turn it back over that we must.
Mr. Chair, can I respond to the question just posed by Ms. Ferreri? No. She asked me to respond, so I can respond if she'd like to.
Very quickly, Mr. Shefke, please.
Point of order.
So let's go to 291 transfers in 2012, 2013. Many of whom were murderers and rapists. Where was your outrage then? Where was Stephen Harper's outrage then? Where was your conservative outrage when the 2 years with the largest numbers of transfers occurred? Where was your outrage? That's my facts, Ms. Ferreri.
Hold on, please. Yes. Point of order, Mr. Caputo. Please keep it on topic.
There is a speaking list. My colleague, Ms. Ferreri, was speaking. It is utter hypocrisy for the Liberal member across the way to say that we shouldn't engage in political theater when he cuts off my colleague who is speaking and then demands to respond. He will have due time to respond to the victims and other Canadians. Thank you.
I was given the floor, Mr. Caputo, by the chair.
Okay, that's it. Ms. Ferreri, can you continue, please?
Listen, I'm not even going to credit that with a response because it's whack-a-mole. I mean, I was in grade 8 or whatever grade I was, and it doesn't even make any sense what he's asking me in terms of my position. But what I can tell you right now is my position is I remember being 15 years old when Paul Bernardo was a Scarborough rapist. And every woman my age at 45 years old knows this. And to the point that I brought up already, the judge who sentenced him said he will never be rehabilitated. He was transferred in the dead of night. And to Ms. Michaud's point about this happened in 2022, why are we talking about it now? Because nobody knew. That is gross incompetence on this government's point. That should be even more concerning to anyone else. How did this happen and why? That is the point of this motion. If you want to stop this from happening again, you have to study it and you have to bring forward these people and in particular the victims. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Wanted to add witnesses and now they're in support of rejecting the very witnesses they wanted to add. Howard Saper, John Howard Society, Canadian Aboriginal Legal Services, Black Legal Services, Canadian Civil Liberties Association. These are the very groups the Liberals said we should add, and now we have Mr. Shifke saying, no, we don't want to add them. We want to go from 6 meetings to 1 meeting. Mr. Chair, that is utter hypocrisy. Mr. Biddle, to his credit, spoke with great sincerity, I would say, when he talked about the impact on the communities. And now he will be asked to vote on this, to go from 6 meetings to 1. Ms. O'Connell echoed similar sentiments. Now she will be asked for this to go from 6 meetings to 1 and gutting the very witnesses that she said should be put forward. And I'm going to wait till Mr. Shifke gets back to his seat so he can hear this. Please.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. I'm sitting right here. No, if Mr. Caputo needs glasses, I can provide him with some. But I'm sitting right here.
Oh, come on.
I'm literally sitting right in front of you, Mr. Caputo.
That's enough, guys.
Your remarks are uncalled for.
Okay. Mr. Caputo, are you going to continue?
Yes, I am. And through you, Mr. Chair, I would really like Mr. Schiffke to hear this. This is from one of the friends of the victims.
This is crazy.
So when he reduces it from 6 people to 1, including the gutting of the victims in subpoint I, quote, and I received this message a few minutes ago, I think it's important.
Mr. Chair?
Oh, you don't want to hear that one.
Go ahead. Ms. O'Connell,
Mr.
please.
Chair, I think if Mr. Caputo wants to read something into the record, that's fine, but he is attributing a motion to Mr. Schiffke that didn't happen, so I think he should stick to his counterpoints instead of this pretty lame attack on personal attacks. We've all been able to speak our points, and he should continue to do so without the personal attacks, because he's kind of making a fool of himself in this moment.
Thank you, Mr. Caputo, please.
Today.
Yeah, I'll always, if standing up for victims means making a fool of myself, Ms. O'Connell, through you, Mr. Chair, I'll make a fool of myself each and every day, and I will show up to Parliament right here, right now, today, tomorrow, and the next day, and make a fool of myself, Ms. O'Connell. Now, I'm going to read this into the record for the benefit of those who plan on voting against this motion, or with this motion to gut from 6 meetings to 1. The Bloc and the Liberals seemingly teaming up to gut the very motion that the Liberals were putting forward. Quote, I think it's important to hear the witnesses on the impact of these moves. Victims deserve more than 1 meeting. End quote. So what I'd really like, what I'd love is for the Liberals and the Bloc to explain on this sub-amendment why they are voting against, why they are voting to gut the very witnesses they said we need to hear from, why they are choosing to side with less information instead of more, while they are accusing others of getting on a soapbox when they themselves are making this political. Mr. Chair, I would love for them to answer that question. Why? Why the victims, please, they should be answering. Thank you.
Is this, you know, when Mr. Schiffke said he was in support of the Bloc motion to move this from 6 meetings to 1 meeting, was that maybe Mr. Schiffke's personal initiative, or is this the position of the Liberal Party on this committee that they would knowingly vote to reduce this from 6 meetings to 1 meeting, full on knowing that they're removing the Elizabeth Fry Society? Like, it would be impossible for us to hear from, you know, the Black Legal Society, the Aboriginal Legal Society, the Elizabeth Fry Society, the John Howard Society. It just seems to me so bizarre that the Liberals could come forward with such an amendment, which was supported by, you know, 3 parties here at this committee, 3 out of 4 parties, and yet flip-flop and turn 180 degrees so quickly from 6 meetings to 1 meeting and cutting the amount of witnesses. I just find it absolutely bizarre, and I'm curious to know whenever they're up on the speaking list if this is just the initiative of 1 Liberal member of the committee, or if this is now the position of the entire Liberal Party at the committee that they want to essentially gut this motion, including their own amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Mr. Couric, please.
Yes. I can't help it, guys. Damien Couric is one of my favorites. Like, he just
Thanks,
is.
Chair, and I think that it's time to get to a vote.
He's a cool guy.
I will not be supporting this amendment as it silences victims, guts meetings where the Canadians are demanding answers about this, and to silence victims, to reduce the ability for parliamentarians, us around this table, to be able to get answers certainly is tragic at best, and at worst would be unparliamentary. So I will end my comments there, and I would urge all members to vote against the amendment, and then we can vote in favor of this study to start the process of getting answers for Canadians, for victims, so that we can start to bring at least an iota of trust back to a justice system that certainly doesn't seem like it has a whole lot of justice right now. Let's get to a vote.
Supportive of this study, we participated in its well, this would be a continuation, but on the initial study that was brought forward, we put forward witnesses and we engaged in that. I think the comments have been made in terms of our work and whether or not that what we heard and the testimony we heard, that we want to move forward with also recommendations and continuing that based on some of the information we heard. Unfortunately, and it was very clear with some of the outbursts by our conservative colleagues, that they're not actually interested in justice or safety, because they're outraged about, well, who cares what happened when the Conservatives were in power? It's pretty interesting, because I think if they are going to sell a narrative to the public that they are tough on crime and only Conservatives will deliver on policies that will support victims, I think we as a committee have every right to look at their very record. Because when we look at their record, what you will see is more instances of reclassification from maximum to medium. Now, they can try to explain away all that they want, but that's the reality.
So it's carried. Okay.
Chair?
Motion to adjourn. Yes.
I'm moving a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Ms. O'Connell. Adjourned.
All right, gang. So what do you think of that? We're here every day watching the live stuff, trying to find the most interesting feeds that we can find about Canadian federal politics. We're trying to learn and share what we're learning with you. My name's Aaron. This is Question Period Canada. That's a wild one. We're here every day live, so like and subscribe, get notified, all that stuff. You'll find out when we're putting videos out. And we're just trying to learn ourselves about Canadian federal politics. Like, how did we get here? How are we going to get out? I don't know, but we're going to find out. We're looking into it. Anyways, tune in. We'll be here tomorrow afternoon. Check us out. Aaron, Question Period Canada. Catch you later. Have something healthy to eat today. Try to stay warm. Thank goodness. Spring is coming. The time changed. That's nice. Catch you next video.